Hello everyone and welcome back to the SBK betting podcast. It's Thursday, the 8th of February, I think. Rain coming down in its bucket loads at present all over the country. Great and miserable outlook going forward. So hoping to find maybe some mudlarks for you to look forward to this weekend, as we will be previewing Newbury and their Super Saturday featuring the Betfair Hurdle. Also Warwick stages the Kingmaker Novice Chase amongst others. But as always on this podcast, we will look back on the weekend that was. A lot of pressure on one man on this podcast after a clean sweep of naps and next best last month. And it wasn't a bad start to February for Tom Collins. Your Dublin Racing Festival selection factor file, one of several winners for Willie Mullins. I think it was 9 out of 15 that he went home with. He clean sweep of all the grade ones, and one of them was factor file, Tom, for you. You were very keen on him. He was 6-4. He beat Gaelic Warrior in what can only be described as a bit of a non-event in the end of it. Gaelic Warrior seemingly not his best going left-handed. I think, Tom, what did we learn? What did we learn from him? What did we learn from the festival in general? We weren't overly excited about it going into it. How do you review it?
Yeah, I'm still not overly excited. Look, the DRF is going to throw up plenty of winners. I was very impressed with Factor File. Obviously, as you say, he was the horse I was looking forward to on the Sunday, and he really wowed me with his performance. But then Gaelic Warrior didn't perform. So it's hard to know really what to make of that race and some of the other races. Marine Dash now disappointed. There were plenty of other short price favourites that weren't there at the finish either. Galopin Des Champs was good. I think we can take him out of it. And Ballyburn as well. They were my two highlights. But the DRF just never really wows me. It's never 2 days that I love. I know plenty of people do, but yeah, it's not for me.
The Triumph Hurdle picture, if anything, hasn't been thrown open by any superstar. Willie Mullins got the 1, 2, 3, 4, but not in the order we expected, which was the same for a few of the races. Nothing out of this world in that juvenile contest, but I had to remind myself Lossiemouth was beating that race last year, but I'm still happy with my Sergino bet at the moment. But yeah, it wasn't overly competitive, was the Willie Mullins Racing Festival. And as you say, Ballyburn, uber impressive, which was one of my selections on the Sunday at 10 to 11. I was very pleased with St. Davy, also across from these shores, that won at 4 to 1. So those are mine. And then Ross Crossbar Millar. So many seconds and gut-wrenching, and Rillo at 14 to 1. That was one of the better tips. JLo at 13 to 2, Zenta at 12 to 1, but it was Titan Discovery that I thought was the takeaway at 6 to 1, and one that you discussed on your Miller's Movers. The podcast, if you haven't listened to it yet, is well worth listening to, which week after week Ross discusses the movers and shakers from a handicap perspective. And I have to say, Ross, he bumped into one on Saturday. Not normally do we see Nicky Henderson getting his horses well handicapped, but looks like he did. But Titan Discovery, he'll be winning more.
Yeah, Titan Discovery probably wanted the ground a little bit softer. Jinko Blue went up £14 on Tuesday. When I saw that, I sort of was very ready to just say, well, that's him done with. But actually, you go back and watch it. I think he's the sort of horse that might improve for a bit of better ground. And actually, £14 might not stop him. I think he's the horse to follow into the spring. But yeah, Titan Discovery, Robbie Llewellyn is doing a really, really good job. He was unfortunate not to win with Hermia Legree at Southwell last week. First run for him coming from Warren Greatrex looked to have improved him. He was going to bolt up, tipped up late on. He's a trainer to follow, and his sort of placing of horses is really good, and I think they did just bump into a really well-handicapped Nicky Henderson horse, which, as you say, is not a usual thing.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about handicaps and Nicky Henderson as we move into the Betfair Hurdle. But before we move on, I just wanted to touch, and I know everyone at SBK want to extend their condolences to the friends, family, and all those at Ditchett of the tragic death of the point-to-point rider, Keegan Kirby. He sounded like an incredible young man, extremely passionate, a huge asset to the Ditchett yard. His death, I think, really put into perspective the trivial issues we can get bogged down by, and what risk riders put themselves into each day. And just know that we all are thinking of the team there. And I'm sure Paul Nicholls, his yard, will be eager to do him proud this weekend on a day Super Saturday at Newbury. They have farmed in the past, and they've really thrown in some of their good-looking types. And the Betfair Hurdle has, year after year, produced some thrilling races, produced some horses that have been seemingly on the right side of the handicap. And I think this is a really good feel to this race this year. The talking horse going into it has all been about Castle de Mottes, a French recruit for Willie Mullins. He stands his ground, and all bar Hansard were declared for the race. So I think we've got a very good feel to this. 25 runners. Have to remind everyone that we've got soft ground, and it probably will get softer as the rain continues to belt down. But we should start with Castle Del Motte before we get into our selections for this race, because he comes into the UK. He's obviously trained in Ireland with an official rating of 133. He's got a rating of 66.5 on over hurdles for his French form. And I think if you want to read deep into it, essentially what you do is you multiply that 2 to get your rating in the UK. And I think many form buffs from France have seen this might look pretty lenient in terms of what he's done over in France. He's beaten a Grade 1 winner. He's beaten a couple of others quite handsomely when he was last seen at a toy back last June. And I suppose, Ross, you're a man on the ground in France, and I'm not sure how much you've looked into this kind of horse, but what do you know about him? What do you say? Do you think that he's thrown in? Do you think he should be favourite as it is? Because it looks like it could be a bit of a plot job here for the Mullins team.
Yeah, he could be the real fly in the ointment, shouldn't he? So, yeah, as you said, the British handicapper will multiply the French mark by 2, so 133. The Irish mark, they still multiply by 2.2. So we'd actually have a handicap mark of 139 in Ireland. We generally talk, and very often talk about adding Irish tax when Irish horses come over to the UK. So feasibly, if he'd have run in a handicap off 139 in Ireland, he could be running off 133, 144 here, and he runs off 133. So he could potentially be very well handicapped. He's not an absolute superstar. He's had 7 runs, so he's not entirely unexposed coming out of France. He took 5 runs before he managed to win, which came at Compiègne in a listed race, which does look to have good form. Amy de Kiff was runner-up there. She's a 3-time winner since, including in a Grade 1 chase, although I think the form of that could be questioned. It perhaps wasn't the deepest Grade 1 chase. But he then went to Auteuil and was pulled up on his penultimate start before leaving France. Didn't really run any sort of race at all. And then went back to Auteuil and won a handicap, which, don't take a huge amount of winning at times. Mamik's Passion, who was runner-up, has run really well since, but hasn't won. Been placed plenty of times, hasn't won. And I'm just slightly reminded of Gaelic Warrior, who came to the Cheltenham Festival in a very similar sort of style and looked very unexposed off a mark of 129. And we know now, of course he was absolutely chucked in off 129, but he didn't win. And I just think that the price is contracting. You've not seen this horse, in regulation Irish UK hurdles. Racing in France is different. They have got to acclimatise. He's got to come across the Irish Sea as well. He could bolt up, but I just think if you're tipping him, unless you know the French form inside out, and I think plenty of people that do know the French form inside out have questioned whether he's absolutely chucked in. He might be nicely handicapped, but not chucked in. I think the percentage call is to oppose him at the current price and just take your medicine if he is a Willie special and bolts up. So the 2 I've gone with against him, and I've gone for horses that I think are going to like the testing ground, because I think it's going to get soft, probably even heavy. Teller the Name was a horse I was really interested in. I think it's a really impressive novice of Ben Pauling, but definitely wants better ground than he's going to get. So the 2 I came down on were Iberico Lord and Lookaway from the Greatwood. The form of that race has worked out really, really well. You've got Lucia winning at Ascot, Songino winning at Aintree, Nameen Lion was second in the Lanzarote, Go Dante won when went back to Cheltenham, and even 7th place Knickerbocker Glory won at Ascot. It's a really strong piece of form. Iberico Lord was disappointing at Ascot next time, was reported to have stopped quickly, and that was on quicker ground and quite a messy race, so I could put a line through that. I think he's going to enjoy getting back on this soft ground. He'll enjoy the long home straight at Newbury, so I certainly want to have him on side. But if I like him, you've got to consider Lookaway, who's been a revelation this year. He's run some really solid races. He gets a £3 pull at the weights for just under 3 lengths from the Greatwood. He's going to bounce out in front, make his own running. So there's going to be no hard luck story in terms of lacking a bit of space when he needs it. He's going to stay very well, as he showed when finishing second in the Challow. Ran a really good race there, against a dour stay. He only came off second best very late on in the piece. Soft ground will suit him. £3 pull at the weights. He'll bounce out in front. I think he's got plenty going for him. He's tough. I just like the angle of Lookaway and Iberico Lord from the Greatwood against what I think is not a vintage Betfair field.
Okay, yeah, and look away only up £1 for that very good second in a Grade 1. And so the handicapper hasn't given him a hard time in a race where the likes of Lucia at the top with a rating of 140, she's gone up 4 for beating Impostoir, just a neck in that Ascot race where a lot of them reoppose. Just wanted a quick thought of the mare Under Control, who I know, Ross, you were quite keen on at the beginning of the season. She ran a much better race when she was second to Astro Diamond at the end of the month, and she doesn't necessarily have a bad rating compared to some of the others, but not one that you're going to play this time.
No, I thought it was interesting that Nico was clearly happy to side with Iberico Lord. She did turn out quite quickly last year and it didn't seem to affect her. But given that she had an issue with her breathing and stopped very quickly first run this year, I just would be a little bit cautious about her on what I think will be very heavy ground.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think that it, as you say, it will be pretty testing. I think you really need a horse that's been in a bit of a fight as well. It used to be a race where we wanted to find sort of an unexposed sort, and potentially that, you know, we don't really know where they are at yet in terms of their level. Maybe there's a bit of juice there, and there are quite a few horses in that respect in it. But Tom, I don't know what the stats have told us over the last couple of years, because you go back and you think, well, you've got to be well weighted, you've got to have a nice, you know, you've got to be at a nice level for this. But the last couple of years, we've seen the likes of Orkan Risk and Glory and Fortune, who've sort of been around the block a little bit and have sort of added a bit of weight to my argument that you want a horse that knows how to be competitive.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, the trends are a bit here and there over the last 10 years, and especially recently, it's been pretty hard to find the winner if you're looking for that classic unexposed type. I think this year we should go back to the unexposed look. This field kind of looks like it's going to go to one of these lightly raced horses that's potentially well handicapped. And this favourite has to be taken on. I completely agree with everything Ross says about him. Yes, he could go and bolt up, but as a punter, you're looking for value, and there is no value in his current price, largely due to the fact he represents Willie Mullins. If you are betting him at 4-1 or shorter, then you do come under that category of mug punter, I'm afraid. And I think you have to take him on, especially with all the places up for grabs here. For an each way selection, this is a bit of a paradise for those kind of punters. And I'm going to do something that I rarely do on this podcast, and that is put up two horses in one race. I know you two like to do it every now and again. I very, very rarely do it, only for Cheltenham. But I'm going to do it here because I think this is a race you've got to attack. And the first horse I'm interested in is Brentford Hope. He looks to have been targeted here at this race by trainer Harry Derham, who I know I'm not just the only person that has his opinion, but he has had a phenomenal start to his training career. Looks like he's going to be one of the leading lights in the training ranks going forward for 10, 20, 30 years. And, you know, with this type of horse that's come off the flat, obviously very talented on the flat. He was placed in Group 2, Group 3 company with Richard Hughes, and he loved soft ground. That's why we didn't see him very often, and that's why his form was a bit inconsistent. Harry Derham has trained him to target a race where the ground is going to be testing off a nice mark. And doesn't this just look the perfect opportunity for him? He's rated 134. He's 3 from 5 over hurdles, including a course and distance victory. And I know I'm in Riyadh and it looks really sunny here, but back home, it is extremely wet. And the ground is going to definitely come for Brentford Hope. So I like him. I think a mark of 134 is very interesting. Cheek pieces put back on. Only the second time he's going to wear them. He wore them once on the flat, I believe, and he finished 5th in the Group 3. He ran okay that day. He was never near the front. But I think with the headgear back on off this mark, he could be a huge player. And the other horse that I'm interested in backing is Altobelli, who is a shorter price, around 8-1 right now for Harry Fry, but just looks like another horse who is unexposed, open to plenty of improvement and being targeted at this race. He's a big individual. He wouldn't have liked the ground last time, and he did very well to finish 3rd in a pretty good race. Did a lot of late running that day, and on his previous start went 2nd. I think this bigger field, more testing conditions, will see Altobelli run better. So Brentford Hope and Altobelli for me, Jess.
Okay, yeah, Brentford Hope, have to agree with what you're saying about Harry Derham, and also this was the week that he really upped his game by going to the sales at the Brown Dispersal and bought Imagine and another horse for a lot of money. So he's trying to add a bit of strength and depth to his yard, and I think he, as you say, is a man going places. And like his boss, he knows how to place horses. They waited with this a little bit. I just was worried that it just looked like he reached quite a hot, steep mark when he was last seen at Newbury. He's gone up an awful lot in the handicap, so this will be a real test. But as you say, Brentford Hope and Altobelli, and I'm haven't been nicking notes, I promise. We all send in our selections, and I happen to have been the last one too, and I've taken a bit from both of you guys. But I agree with TC and what you said about Altobelli. I like him as the one that isn't really the finished article. I thought he went through that race at Ascot far too keen. He'll probably like a little bit more pace, which will be set up by my other selection, Look Away. And he was doing a lot of good work. He was just lugging a little bit to his left, and maybe it's like greener still, but he's a horse that clearly his yard, the Harry Fry team, have liked a lot. He ran to a pretty decent level as a novice last season. So Altobelli is the one that might still be on the right side of the handicapper. And then, as Ross has said, Look Away. You know, Neil King has made no secret about how high he regards this horse, and his record this year goes to prove that. A win and 2 excellent seconds in handicaps this term, and stepped up into that Grade 1 grade in good style, just outstayed, as Ross mentioned. I think he's my horse that has sort of really shown how to be competitive and knows that there is a fight in him at the tail end of the race. And then Altobelli, my sort of more unexposed sort, who's got that really decent soft ground form, which I think it will be on Saturday at Newbury. And poor Newbury, they always seem to be fighting with the elements. It's either frozen off or it's very quick, or there's always some sort of issue. So let's hope that it's not too testing, and that we get a nice decent playing field, because it's not just the Betfair Hurdle. We've got the Game Spirit, we've got the Denman Chase, we've got the return of Shishkin. And before we get into Naps Next Best, Ross, we have followed Shishkin's career with a fine-tooth comb. He's got more letters to his name than the alphabet, and I just wonder whether this will be the day that he get redemption for what's been a very frustrating season for him in what I'd imagine is quite an obvious and slightly open race for him to go and win.
Yes, it is. But then we said that about the 1965 chase, didn't we? And he decided that it wasn't for him. I hope all those creases are ironed out. I hope that he's back in a happy place. My one concern with him is if he's a little bit fragile mentally, that mistaken unseat at Kempton, he didn't do an awful lot wrong. And I just hope he hasn't gone a bit surly and questioning his jumping, because his jumping was brilliant at Kempton. If he turns up in that sort of form, he'll win this comfortably. And I think as racing fans, and I know some of us aren't Nicky Henderson fans, but I personally am, we want him to run and run well, because he's probably the one horse on natural ability that's capable of serving up to Galopin Des Champs at the Gold Cup, and that would just add a really nice layer of intrigue heading into the festival. Yeah,
I would agree with that. So the Devon Chase, the 205 at Newbury, sees Shishkin. He's got 4 rivals, the likes of Protectorat and Hitman. But from what we know from his level, what he can do, if he turns up the Shishkin we know and he gets round and he starts, he should be winning that Devon Chase, the Grade 2. Okay, let's do Naps the Next Best. And I think, Tom, with the graded races in mind, I know that you're looking ahead to this weekend from one of the other races, the Grade 2, the Game Spirit Chase. One of your selections comes here.
Yeah, the Game Spirit has kind of lost its magic in recent years. Punters have generally dealt with small fields. I think the average over the last decade is just 4 runners per renewal, and an odds-on favourite. There's been 6 odds-on favourites in the last 10 years as well. However, this year's renewal, albeit is slightly small still with just 6 runners, is a little bit more enticing. You've got Funambule Sivela, who looks to return and win this race for the 3rd consecutive time. You've got Editeur de Gite. You've got Calico, all 3 front runners. So you're guaranteed a good pace in this race. And that should really make it a match between Boot Hill and Edwardstone. And the market's kind of going that way. Both horses around 2-1 right now. The former, Boot Hill, I think is very much a flat track bully. 6 of his 7 wins have come on flat right-handed tracks. Ascot, Kempton and Taunton. The other win, I believe, came at Newton Abbot, but that became a 2-runner race and it wasn't much of a heat. That's all right, Gino was 2nd. Very good horse when he was with us. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, but he only kind of developed later in his career, not at the time where he was racing against Boot Hill. So I'm not sure that this track, albeit Newbury is pretty flat too, is going left-handed. And I don't think that will suit him as well as it will suit Edwardstone. Now, a few weeks back, when we were covering the race that Edwardstone was running in, I was very anti-Edwardstone, saying he hasn't won for a long time. And that is true. But this race should set up perfectly for him. Dropping back to the 2 miles in the Game Spirit, I think he's going to have everything set up perfectly. And I love the fact that the ground's getting softer for him. So my nap of the day is going to be Edwardstone in the Game Spirit, the 240 at Newbury. Hopefully he can get the job done for Alan King. And I'll be surprised if he goes off anywhere near 2-1. I think 6-4, 11-8 is a lot more accurate about his chance. I'll keep my next best a lot shorter, and it's Union Avenue in the listed bumper and Newbury's card on Saturday, the 4:25. This son of Shantu was placed in a couple of points for trainer Colin Bowe in Ireland. He bumped into a nice one in Captain Bellamy on the second occasion. That horse subsequently moved to Paul Nicholls, won a bumper, and then was not seen in a listed bumper last time up. So the form is relatively strong. But this horse looks a completely different proposition since he's started racing under rules. He won very impressively at Kelso first up. He actually slipped and almost came down on the bend that day. It's not written in the race comments, but if you watch the replay back, you'll notice that, to be fair, he had an excuse for losing, yet he didn't lose. He still won the race. So I'm marking him up dramatically for that. And then he won a bumper at Aintree, beating a horse called Farland, who I really like as a longer-term prospect. He's going to be overlooked slightly in the market, I presume. We don't have prices at the time of recording, but there are plenty of Paul Nicholls trainees in there, etc. There's some good-looking horses. And because he's trained by Jimmy Moffat, I think he'll be a bigger price than he should be. So Union Avenue in a 4:25 at Newbury is my next best.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think I read somewhere that Jimmy Moffat said that he thinks this could be one of the best horses he's trained. And they've obviously himself and Charlotte Jones have had such a great time of things, maybe at the lesser meetings. So this might be their chance to shine on a big stage. A good race that, and I'll have more thoughts on that. And yeah, Edwardstone, interestingly, he's coming back in trip in a race where he doesn't have to worry about John Bond. So I think that's probably, Alan King finding the opportunities of the horse to come back at his preferred trip of recent times when the field's been just that slightly weaker. So good luck to Edwardstone, who deserves a win to his name. Thanks to Tom for your nap and next best to join your Betfair Hurdle selections. Ross, obviously great racing at Newbury throughout the course of the day. Have you got anything else from the track?
Yeah, it was a weekend where I struggled to find anything I particularly like, Jess, but I have got two. The Nap is a horse I do really like, Hasting for John Joe Neal, JP McManus. He was one of my hurdlers to follow for the season. I was impressed by what he did at Catterick last time. He coped with a drop back in trip from 2 mile 4 when winning at Leicester to 2 mile 3 at Catterick in a sharper track. And Pick Rock was given a really good front running ride by Keelan Woods. He finished runner up. Hasting came there travelling very comfortably and looked to be able to pick him up. And actually, the only jumping mistake he made came at the second last. Pick Rock winged it. He didn't. And for a moment, it looked like he might struggle to pick up Pick Rock. But he did, and did so quite comfortably under quite tender handling from Richie McLean. I think this is a really smart horse. The drop back in trip even further is a slight unknown, and it might work against him. But I think the switch to the galloping track is definitely a positive. Catterick was far too sharp for him, really. Long home straight will suit him, as will the heavy ground. I think he's a really smart horse. I suspect they're gearing him towards the EBF final, but I think he can pick this up along the way. And then that was the 12.55, if I didn't say. And then my next best, comes in the 1:30. It's Kintara for Mel Rowley and Charlie Deutsch. He's 8 years old, but he's still pretty lightly raced and fairly unexposed for an 8-year-old. He's missed plenty of chunks of his career so far. I think he should have won at Warwick last time. He perhaps idled a bit when he got to the front and then made a fairly dramatic jumping error at the final flight and got picked up late on. It's gone up £4 for that to a mark of 128. But on his penultimate start at Aintree, where he gave £10 and 7 lengths to Gay Legacy, she's won since and she's now 117. I think a mark of 128 still looks plenty workable. He's against some pretty exposed horses in the 1:30, and I think he'll pick up the winning thread again and land that for Mal Rowley.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to hope that the John Joe Neal team will continue to have a good weekend. That's where my nap is coming from their yard. Inch House is running in 350, the Novices Limited Handicap Chase, where he's got the likes of Mr. Coffee, who must be one of the most frustrating horses in training at present. And I've saw some early betting with him at the top of the market here, but I think Inch House should be. I think he'll be much better suited by Newbury, a track he's won twice over this season. He was beaten by Stumptown last time with Gavin Cromwell, who just looked like a very well handicapped sort. He kind of got first run on him. I think Inch House was sort of tapped for a bit of toe, and he ran on okay to his credit. But I think he'll be much better suited, as mentioned, returning to Newbury in potentially not as a deeper race as that. So Inch House in the 350 for me. And then 425, I'm going to take on Tom's bumper selection, as I have been waiting to see Roman Roy run. Bryony Frost is on board. Harry Cobden has gone on Histronic for Paul Nicholls, but I don't know how much there is between that horse Histronic and Roman Roy. Maybe the fact that Roman Roy hasn't won a race yet, that would mean be no harm to him. This horse, Roman Roy, was a runner-up when I saw him running at Wincanton back all the way in November, and he had a horse behind him that day called Royce, I think we say it, who won very comfortably at Newbury for Ben Pauling at the end of January. The form of the race in general has worked out pretty well. Horace's Pearl, who won the race, I think is pretty useful. But Roman Roy is a horse that I was really taken by physically. I thought he kept on very strongly. He looks like a nice sort to begin out again. We'll see if the ground might be maybe on the testing side, but he's a Blue Brazil out of presenting mare. He seems to be, I'd say, manage it not too bad, and I think he's won just at a potentially, hopefully, an each way price in that race at Newbury. So a lot to look forward to, and thank you to Tom and to Ross as always. We'll look forward to getting stuck into this and reviewing it this time next week as we prepare to get more focused on Cheltenham, and as I mentioned last week, we will be having a Cheltenham preview coming out soon. But for now, don't forget, all new SBK users get £30 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. Head to SBK for lots of other offers and promotions throughout the weekend. And another plug for Ross Miller's Movers and Shakers, as I listened to it this weekend, and I thought it was a very insightful look at what we have seen, and very important as we come to this sort of pinnacle moment with the spring festivals coming up. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you for listening.